All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's Abacus Law webinar is on creating custom reports, really just reporting in general, but we're also going to talk about creating your own custom reports. As usual, if you could do me a favor, just click on the hand raising button if you can see my Abacus Law program okay. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I will go ahead and put your hands down. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, like I said, we're going to be talking about custom reporting in the Abacus Law program. So there's obviously, a lot of different reasons why you would want to understand why you need reporting or understand how to do reporting in Abacus Law, because a lot of times you got to print your calendars out, or maybe you want to target all of the court appearances that you have for the next 6 months. Or maybe you're just looking for a really basic caseload report, structured by attorney or something like that. So there's a lot of different reasons you would want to know how to utilize the reporting functions in Abacus Law. It's really just for, extracting data and things like that and being able to visually see that data and potentially manipulate that data in Excel or something like that. Of course, you can always just view your reports in PDF format. Using our viewer. Well, we'll talk about all of that stuff today. If you have any questions, please type those into the questions box. I will do my best to answer all questions in the time that we have allotted today. But if I don't get to your question, don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. I will follow up with you by email after our webinar is over today. So don't feel like I skipped you. I saw you, and I'm going to follow up with you. Also, if your question is a little bit more elaborate and just for time purposes, we're not going to cover it on today's webinar. I might just give you a call, potentially, get together with you in a go-to meeting and, address your question that way. So it kind of just depends. But I'll do my best to answer all questions as they come in. So don't forget to put those into the question box. All right, let's dive in. Reporting. When you access your reports, I would say the most dominant way, the way that most people do it, is by going into the file menu. So in that top left corner, you have that little file menu that I'm sure everybody has perused throughout their usage of the program. And you'll notice about halfway down, there is an option for reports. Now, if you get to this step and that option is grayed out, in other words, you can't click on reports, that means that you don't have security permissions to run them. So you will need to get with your program administrator at your firm and either have them adjust your security permissions so that you can, or tell them which report you want so that they can run it for you. And you'll notice in that report list that pops out, got quite a few different options here. The three main report types that I find most firms are running are going to be names, events, or matters reports. Those are the three big databases inside of Abacus. So obviously those are the ones that people want to see reported data on the most. But also, we have reports on the different code types that you have inside of your program. So if you're looking for a list of, all the what codes or all the who codes or all the where codes and things like that, maybe all of the attorney codes, you can run a codes report and get that list. Also, for our users that utilize calendar rules, those calendar rules can be quite involved and quite lengthy. So some people just want to view those in a report format so that they can see the logic and understand kind of the backbone of the rules. So if you print that little rules report there, that's a great way to see that as well. There's also audit trail reports, which are really nice. You can run an audit trail of your names database, your events database, your matters database, or all data in your program, which is really good if you're trying to figure out what happened, okay? Let's say I have a matter that I opened up and I noticed that all the notes were gone in the matter, and I knew that I had 100 notes in there. Where did they all go? Well, I can run an audit trail report on that specific matter, and it may, give me some, give me a path to what occurred. Okay, it may help me out there. And then, of course, we have batch reporting. Okay, batch reporting is if you have a bunch of different reports that you always run at a certain time. Like maybe, at the end of the month, we always run the active case report. We always run the productivity report. We always run the statute of limitations expiration report. If you're always doing that, those reports all at the same time, you can put them into batches. And then all you have to do is just run the batch, and that'll save you some time. The system will generate all of the reports within that batch. So think about, that scenario. What are some different reports that you are constantly running, all the time, and maybe put those into a batch and make your life a little bit easier. And then, of course, you have the custom reports option. The custom reports option actually only, now you can see I don't have any custom reports. This is only referring to custom reports that Abacus has specifically created for you. Okay, so if when you purchased the program, we also did some customizing work for you, you would find the customized reports actually listed underneath that custom reports section. So the custom reports we're talking about today, it's not the same as what you see here. Okay, it's not this option. We're actually going to show you how to go into your names, events, and matters reporting menu and tweak your reports there or create reports from scratch. So just keep in mind, the custom reports option in this menu, that's referring to custom reports that Abacus has created for you, not the ones that you're going to create for yourself. Okay. All right, so let's talk about some common reports. How about active cases, open cases? That's a big one that people like to see. So that obviously is a matters report. Okay, so when you're choosing what type of report you want to run, just think about the database that that report is pulling information from, because that's where you're going to start. So if I want to do an open case report, I obviously know that that is the matters database. So I'm going to choose File, Reports, Matters. Okay, and what that's going to do is it opens up a little window called the Report Control window. In this case, we're referring to the Matters Report Control window. Okay, so let's talk about the anatomy of this little screen here. A couple buttons here that you need to be familiar with. The first one, Report. Okay, this button that says Report is showing you what type of report you are about to run. So it says Matters List next to that button. That means I'm about to run the Matters List report. Okay, if I click this button here, that's going to open up a list of all of the available report layouts that I have in my system. Okay, now your program comes with quite a few predefined report layouts, and then obviously, you can create your own and modify the existing reports as well. So this is essentially the layout of the report. So it's what's going to show, like what fields are going to show on the report, like the matter name, the assigned attorney, the open date, the court, things like that. So if you actually highlight one of these reports and you click the edit button over here, that actually shows you the report layout. So if you look at this little window here, this Matters List report that comes default with your program, by the way, is going to show me the name of the matter. It's going to show me the case number. It's going to show me the assigned attorney. It's going to show me the case code. It's going to show me the close date, if there is one. And it's going to show me the court that the case currently presides in. All right? So it's just giving you a layout. And of course, it puts in one little line of example data so that you can see what the data is going to look like in that field, okay, when it actually prints to the report. So that's why you see right here where it says first matter, 1, 2, 3, 4, PI, San Diego Superior. It's basically just pulling data from an example case so that you can visually see what it's going to look like, okay? So the key takeaway here is this report button is what you're going to click when you want to choose the report type that you want to utilize, okay? So basic matters list is a very standard report layout. But look, I've got matters list with events, matters list with notes, malpractice alert reports, immigration reports, different things like that, okay? Matters list, open only, different, each one of these potentially shows different information. So if you're the person who's running a lot of reports in your office, it would behoove you to become familiar with the report layouts that come with your system. Okay, like for instance, a malpractice alert. If I highlight that report and I click edit, what does that show? That shows a lot of the similar fields that my matters list report shows. Okay, so take a look at those reports, know what fields they show by default, and then notice the options in that little edit report window. I can delete fields that I don't want to show on the report. I can add fields that may be missing that I think are going to be pertinent. Like for instance, maybe I don't care on this report about the court. Well, let's remove it. I can just click on that little field, click delete, and it will ask me if I want to remove that court column from my report. So I can say yes, and there we go. Now I'm no longer going to show the assigned court on this matters list report. All right, maybe I want to add the open date field because I want to have a column that shows me the date that the case was open. Well, I just click the add button up here and I choose from my list of available fields. Okay, here's my open date field. I click done, and there we go. Now I've added the open date column to my report. So it's very, very simple to remove fields or columns that we don't need, and it's very simple to add fields in our database to our report. I can also rearrange the layout of my columns by just dragging them. So if I want my open date to be in front of my close date column, just click on it, hold your mouse down, and drag it over. See that? See how it just changed to a little hand, and now my open date precedes my close date in my report layout. So I'm going to show my name of the matter, I'm going to show the case number, the assigned attorney, the type of case, the open date, and the closed date. Okay? So now I can click done, and I've just modified that report. Okay, that report layout. Keep in mind, when you edit a report, you are editing that report for everyone. Okay? So make sure if you are going to make some really, wacky edits to a report, you may want to actually clone the report and make the edits to the clone. Okay, that way you're not editing the report that everybody else in the office loves just the way it is. Okay, so just be mindful of your coworkers when you are, modifying your reports in the list. You can clone as many reports as you want and give them their own name. So for instance, I can clone this matters list report and I can call it, Scott's list. Okay, something easy like that so that, I'm not ruining things for everybody else. Okay, maybe I just call this, Scott's favorite report. Okay, now I've got it listed in my report menu, and now I can edit that report layout, and I can use that moving forward if I need to. Okay, so just be mindful of that when you are editing your reports. We don't want to edit something that other people really, really like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose my matters list report. That's the layout that we like. That's the the columns that we want to see on the report. But we're not done yet, right? Because now what we have to do is we have to qualify records to show on a report. That's the whole purpose of reporting. We set a criteria, and the system validates that criteria against our records, right? We call that a query. That's all a query is a filter. So that's why the very next button that you have here says query. You'll notice that when you open up the report control window, by default, the query that is set is called all records. That means that if I were to just output this report right now, it's going to give me a matters list for every single matter record that's in my system, whether it is open or closed, okay, no matter what. So that may not be something that you want to do. You may want to define a specific filter, a specific query. So what I'm going to do is click this little query button, and you can see I've got two options. I've got the quick query option, and I've got the Query Manager option. If I choose Quick Query, I have the ability to use a blank matter screen to set some very basic default filters. For instance, maybe I just want to see matters assigned to a specific attorney. So I can just click my little attorney field here and choose the attorney from my list. Then I click Done. And now notice that next to my query button, I have a temporary query set where the attorney is equal to SH, which is my attorney code. Okay, and then I have the ability to print that or output it to my screen. So when you click that query button, you have to remember the quick query is temporary. Okay, it is temporary. It's not static. It isn't something that you're going to create and save. It's just there to quickly filter data. Okay, if you need a static query that you are going to be using all the time and that other people are going to be using as well, you want to utilize the Query Manager. The Query Manager is where we house our queries that we are constantly using over and over. Okay, so when I go into my Query Manager here, I'm going to be presented with a ton of different queries. Okay, now my list of queries here is probably a lot more elaborate than yours, but you will have some queries that come with your program. Okay, one of which that comes with your program is called the open query. So if you run a search for the word open in your Query Manager, you'll see it, okay, right there. Open is the query ID. The description says only shows open matters, okay? So that is the query that I'm going to set because I only want to see active cases. I don't want any closed cases to show on my matters list. Okay, so notice now that I clicked that query from my Query Manager, see how it has the word open now written next to the query button. That just is telling me that I've established that I'm going to use the open query. Okay, so first step is always choose the report that you're wanting to run. Second step is set your query that you are looking to filter by. Okay, and then the third step is to choose your output. Screen is a very popular output destination because most people want to see the report before they commit to sending that thing to the printer. Okay, so if you output to screen and then click print, it's going to pull that report up for you in our little report viewer. Okay, and the report viewer is pretty much your just like a PDF viewer, basically, is what it is. And then if you like it, great, go ahead and print it. There's a print button, there's a save button, you can email it, okay, so on and so forth. All right, so you can do pretty much all the same things that you would be able to do with a report in Adobe, minus, redacting and, all that stuff. All right, so that's the output to screen function. Now, if you're a true reporting person like me, outputting to screen or outputting to PDFs in general, they're great for some of the attorneys who just want to read the data. They don't want to manipulate it. But really, if you want to manipulate that data, okay, you want to set some sorting, you want to, hide columns and stuff like that, outputting to a data merge file, specifically a comma delimited data merge file, that is the best way to go. Because what is a comma delimited merge file? Well, that's just a fancy way of saying Excel. Okay? So if you want to export your report to Excel, then what you need to do is in your output button, you need to choose data merge file, and then you need to choose comma delimited. Okay? When you choose comma delimited, it's going to set that. And if you want, you can choose to open the generated file when it's generated. That's pretty common. So don't forget to check that checkbox, okay? Now when I click print, it's going to open up my save dialog window, and I'm going to be able to save this little Excel temporary file. It's just, we call it a temp file. It's really just a standard CSV. I'm going to go ahead and save that to my desktop, okay? So you can choose anywhere on your network to save it. And then what it should do by default is open up whatever that final result is, since we're opening that generated document. So then you basically just end up with that item in Excel where you can, do all your normal functions just like you normally would. Okay, so think about that. How are the people in your firm going to want their, oh, and here's the finished result, by the way. Sorry, it opened on my other monitor. Notice here, I've got all my info in Excel now. See that? Much more easy to manipulate. I can set my sort and filter options up here. I can run my searches. So this is a very detailed report that has a lot of data. This is a great format to view it in, okay? But those are the three main points of the report control window. First, you select your report, then you select your query, then you select your output, okay? Now, when it comes to customizing your own reports, that's where we're spending time in both the report window and the query window, okay? So if I click that report button, because I want to modify my report layout, we just revert back to what I taught you earlier, okay? We're highlighting the report that we want to edit or potentially cloning it if we're nice, okay? But once we get into this editing window, this is where we can manipulate by adding or deleting fields to our reports, okay? Also, in here, not, in addition to adding and deleting, you have the ability to format different areas like the page layout. If you notice, when I ran that report, one of the things that occurred was that added field, that added column of open date, it actually cut off when I viewed it inside of the PDF viewer. That's because I had it formatted in portrait view. Okay, so if I'm going to be adding a bunch of columns to my report here, it might make sense to format that in landscape, okay, not portrait, just so, it looks a little better. Again, that's only going to be something that matters if you are, in fact, printing the PDF or viewing on the screen. When you're in Excel, it doesn't really matter, because it's, printing, with the standard column format of Excel. But also notice you can adjust the page size as well, okay? Letter or legal, okay? And then you can also, this is a nice little tool too. You can also choose how you want your records separated, okay? Everybody's a little bit different, with their eyes, and some people, they wear glasses, and some people have smaller monitors. So having a line of demarcation there, maybe a drawn line, or maybe a blank space plus a line, that's a great way to just identify, the separation in records. So you can do all of those things just by going into the little format section and choosing the page layout, okay? You can also adjust fonts if you don't want the standard, I believe it's just sans serif font, or maybe Calibri font there if you wanted to do something like that, okay? You also have the ability to include sub-reports, okay? The default reports that come with your system, some of them include sub-reports already. For instance, we looked at the report called Matters List with Notes, okay? That's going to show notes attached to a matter, okay? Maybe we want to see the matters list with the names. Maybe we want to see the matters list with events. These are examples of matters reports that also include sub-reports that reference a different database, like the events database, or the names database, or the notes database. So you may have a solution already pre-built for you, but if you don't, if you need to create your own, then when you edit that report, there is a sub-report option right here where you can choose the other databases that you'd like to include, okay? So with this basic matters list, I can also choose to include, any linked documents, or you can see here, because I have some specialty versions, I could include maybe criminal defense charges, prior records, things like that. when it comes to my report. So take a look at that sub-report area too, because you may be able to customize some sub-reports in there as well, okay? Now, the sub-reports that you enter, you are limited to, okay? So for instance, I can't do a sub-report that shows me active cases with all of the linked names, all of the, linked documents, all of the events. I can't just kind of pile on a bunch of nested reports. If you need something like that, then what you're going to need to do is just do them in separate reports and merge them in Excel, okay? Or if you don't want to do that, we can customize the program for you and create those reports, okay? Now, obviously, when it's something like that, there is an additional professional services charge. So just contact us and we can, give you a quote. It's pretty competitive from a price standpoint. So, if your reporting need is pretty elaborate and it's not something that you feel you can do on your own in Abacus, we have a service that can do it for you. That's what I'm getting at. So, make sure you make sure you contact us and let us price that for you. Okay. All right. Now, the same rules apply if you are doing a names report. Okay. So everything I showed you in Matters report, same thing applies if you're going into names, only you're just, you're focusing on names. Okay. Same type of report control window. You still got to select the report type. You still got to set your query, and you still got to, adjust your output. Okay. But the logic behind what you're doing is exactly the same, okay? Now, events sometimes can be a little bit of a different animal because a lot of times people want to print that report directly from their calendar. So either way, it's up to you. You can go into the reports option here and choose events for calendars, and you'll see in here, you have a couple different options specifically relating to dates, like the interval, right? And then potentially the who code that is assigned to a specific event, okay? Like for instance, if I just want to print out, the weekly calendar for all events from June 10th to June 16th, and I want to target a specific attorney, then I just click this who button and I choose from my available who codes the appropriate attorney, okay? Now, when I output this to my screen, I'm only going to be seeing information for that specific range of dates and that specific attorney, okay? So just keep that in mind, all right? Now, again, if you are outputting to your screen using the PDF viewer, you are working with a finite amount of space. Okay, so you can only fit so much information in an 8x11 piece of paper, right? So if you've got events on your calendar that have 1,000 words in the note window for them, you're going to have to expect that some of that text is going to get cut off because you're working with a finite amount of space. So again, it may be more beneficial to output to Excel if that's something you are in need of. Okay, so just keep that in mind. There should be an option for you. And then, of course, you can always manipulate the data. Okay. Now, I did mention that you can access the event reports by going into the report control window here, or you can do it straight from the calendar. Okay. When you have your daily organizer open, or your weekly, or your monthly, there is a print button in the top right corner. Notice it just looks like a little printer. Okay. If you click that, you have the ability to print your calendars. And you can choose the daily organizer, the weekly, the monthly, the yearly if you're feeling brave, and then some additional reports like the days report, the month report, your to-do list, and then any other reports that fall under, the list of event reports, okay? But don't forget to set your specific date up here that you're wanting to target, okay? And then you can just print them directly from there, okay? So that's another way to do it. It really just depends on how detailed you're wanting to get and how much manipulation you're wanting to do to the report before you actually run it, okay? So if you are a reporting person, become familiar with these report control windows, okay? Take a look at the different report types that you have. Click that edit button and look and see what fields are shown and manipulate them as you need. If you are feeling nervous about editing reports, clone them first. Edit the clone. Use the clone as your guinea pig. Okay, that way if you make a mistake, no big deal. You still have the original. Also clone them if you are just trying to make a report specific to you. Okay, because remember, any change you make to a report is global. Okay, it affects everybody. All right, we're going to dive into some questions here. It looks like we got some good ones coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top, and I will read these aloud for everybody. Can you set the columns in a report to a different order? So absolutely, you can set, here, let me show you this here actually. I'll go into my report control window, and we'll stick with matters as an example. Okay, and when I click this report button, and I edit my report layout, I can manipulate the order of these columns by dragging them, okay? And I can also manipulate the sort order if I want, okay? You know, just because I visually have these columns in a certain layout doesn't mean that I can't, you know, maybe sort them by the open date, okay? If I click on that, notice I have a little index option, and I can choose the index right here, okay? And I can say that I want to go ahead and choose, you know, whichever one from that list, okay? I can do that right then and there. So take a look, you know, at some of these other little options here that you have, because there are different things that you can do inside of this report control window, okay, that allows you to set them by sort order. Also keep in mind, if you are exporting to Excel, then you obviously have the ability to sort it there as well. Okay. All right, so let me take a look here. This is a long question, so I'm going to read it to myself first, so pardon my silence. Okay, so Francis, I see your question there about the weekly calendar report. I will follow up with you offline to get that answer squared away for you. Okay, let's see. I'm going to move on to another question. Let's see, in the names report, how do I add a field to include the matter name? So Jennifer, this is an example of cross-referencing a separate database, okay? So if you go into the report control window for names and you click into that report list, there may be a report that comes, yeah, so it looks like there's a couple here. Names list with matters, okay? That is one that will show any attached matters to those names reports as well. So that should include the matter name. Okay, so I would start there, utilize that one, and then maybe if you need to tweak it a little bit to make it look a little better, you can do that. But that should be one that automatically comes with your program. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's see, event report control window. Can you choose a group as the who? We have groups based on office locations. Absolutely. So remember, when you are looking at the event report control window, remember, it's a little bit different. You've got a couple extra buttons here, okay? Specifically the who button, all right? When you click the who button, that is going to open up this little who setup window where you then click the arrow to see all of your who codes, okay? Make sure that you are including work groups. Okay, because if you choose to include work groups, then you should be able to choose them from this list. So assuming, Carol, that you are setting up work groups for your office locations, you should see them in this list, and then it's just a matter of choosing that work group from the selection. Okay, so that's a great way to include, groups of people in mass when you're looking at those event reports. If you are not familiar with how to set up work groups inside of this program, I invite you to check the reference guide and the videos there is, under the setup menu, there is a little section called work groups. So as it is with Carol here, they have multiple office locations. So in addition to having standard WHO codes for each of their users, they also have work groups that are applied for each of their office locations. So that way you can apply events to specific groups. So I invite you to look there a little bit deeper for those who have never seen that before. And maybe that's something that'll be useful for you. Let's see. Can you run a report for a matter or names using a date range, or is it only for events? So by default, event reports always include a date range option. Okay, that's just kind of the nature of events. But yes, you can also include date-specific criteria for your matters and names reports. A common example would be a report that shows all matters that were opened in June. Okay, that's a common type of report that people want to run. Okay, when you are specifying something like that, you need to stay query focused. Okay, so the query is where you are going to make that date definition. So when you go into your query manager, you need to create a query that accounts for that date range. So let's think about this for a second, okay? And we're going to stick with my example. What we want to do is we want to show a list of cases that were opened in the month of June, okay? So in other words, from June 1st to June 31st, okay? That's what we're looking for. The way we can manipulate this is actually, and remember, we only want open cases, okay? That's key, okay? So what we can do here is we can actually modify one of our existing queries, okay? And I'm going to just use the open query. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone that query, because what I want to do is add some additional filter, okay? So I'm going to call this query Open June, all right? And I'm going to edit that query. And notice I already have my first line of logic in my query. How do we know that a case is active in Abacus? The way we know that a case is open and active in Abacus is because there is no date in the closed field. So if you look at this little query, this first line of logic says closed is empty, all right? So that's the first line of logic that has to be true. If the closed date field is empty, then we know the case is open and we want it to show on our report, right? Pretty logical. But now we have to add some additional logic to our query because we have to account for the opened date range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this add button. And when I click this add button, the system is going to ask me how I want to add my next logical condition. And I get two options here. I can either choose an AND operator or I can choose an OR operator, okay? So the AND operator, if I choose that, then that means both lines of logic have to be true. So not only does the case not have to have a close date, but it also has to be true with whatever the second line of logic is. If I choose the OR operator, then either OR can be true. So for our example, I'm choosing AND because not only do I want the case to be open, but I also want to enter in some date specifications. So once I click that AND operator, it's going to take me into my expression editor, okay? And my expression editor is where I start the process of adding that extra line of logic. So what field do we want to target in our scenario? Remember, our scenario calls for only cases opened in June. So that means the field we want to target is the opened date field. So I'm going to choose that field from my list. Now I'm going to tell the program how to make its judgment of that field. But the good thing is is that if you want to use a date range, there's a comparison in here that says prompt me for value. All right? Because the thing about date ranges is they constantly change, right? One month I want to see this report for June. The next month I want to see it for July, right? I don't want to have to go back every time and edit this query to account for the new month. So if I'm using this comparison of prompt me for value, well then I just get prompted whenever I run the report to enter my date range in, okay? So look here, it says enter the value to compare to the open. So my comparison operator is going to be is exactly equal to, or if it's a date, you know what I can do is my less than or greater than. That's a good thing to do. Okay, I can say is greater than or equal to, and then, you know, my default value of maybe June 1st. It's just a default value. Okay, it can be modified. Okay, and now I click done, and I can add my second line of logic, because remember, it's a range, right? So we want the start of the range and the end of the range. So I'm going to click this add button again. I'm going to choose and I'm going to basically just mimic what I'm doing. Okay, open date. My comparison is prompt me for value. My comparison operator is the opposite of what I did before, less than or equal to. And then my default value would be 31. Okay. Click done. And there we go. There's our query. Okay. So anytime we run this query, the system is going to do three things. It's going to look at all the matters, and it's going to make sure that none of them have a close date. Then it's going to prompt me to enter in the start of my date range. Then it's going to prompt me to enter in the ending date range of the open date. That's what this query means. So when I click done and I apply that query that I've just created, watch what happens when I run this query, or when I run this report rather. See that? It just prompted me for a value. So I can just go ahead and put in here 06/01/2019. And then for my ending date, I can say 06/31/2019. And then I click done. And then it's going to, if I have any other comparisons, it's going to put that in there as well. Okay, so this is the window that pops up. Okay, whenever you put in that prompt me for value. So it's very, very useful for date ranges. Very, very useful. Now, I didn't have anything that matched that criteria, so nothing showed. Okay, so you know, take a look at that. All right. Okay. Yeah. June ends on the 30th. Thank you, Margaret. My mistake. That's my birthday month too. You'd think I'd know that. All right. So prompt me for value is a great little tool in your query if you want people to, you know, actually put in, you know, the value that they want judged on the fly. Works great for attorney codes, for who codes too. So if you have like a, let's say you just want to run like an active cases report for specific who codes, you can do that as well. Okay. I can again just clone my little open date query. Okay, and maybe call it open by attorney. Whoops. Okay, and then edit this to actually query off of the assigned attorney field. Whoops. See that? I'm choosing my attorney field, and for my comparison, instead of putting in a static attorney code that I have to change every time, I can prompt me for value, and I can say is exactly equal to, and then I don't even have to put in a default value. Okay, now when I run this query, or when I run this report, watch what happens. It asks me to put in the attorney code that I want to compare to. So I type in the attorney code and I click done. There's my report. Okay, 5 matters. I run it again. I put in a different attorney code, SJ. I click done. No matters match that record. Okay, So if you have a bunch of attorneys that you're constantly wanting to run that report for, using that prompt me for value window is a great way to do it. Great way to do it. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question there, Christy. I know I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but it was a good question. Let's see. Can you run a daily report that shows only certain types of events on the calendar? Yeah, so, again, what shows on the report all depends on your query. So if you only want to see, events that have a specific who code, then you need to modify your query that you're using to account for that. Whoops. So if I go into my little reports for events section, okay, when I modify my query here, okay, I want to make sure, like, here's one that doesn't show reminders. There's a bunch actually already in your system, okay? So if you just want to see events that have a what code of trial, there's one for that. If you just want to see statute of limitations events, there's one for that. If you want to see all the events but, no reminders or no done events, or maybe no to-dos or something like that, it's all about the query that you choose, okay? So there should be some in here that should, take care of it already, but if you need to add or modify some of the existing ones, you can do that. Just follow the same, steps and logic that I showed you previously. Okay, yes, thank you. My birthday is June 18th. Thank you for saying happy birthday. All right. Any other questions before I let you go? We'll give it one more minute since we're over the time and I know everybody's busy. Okay, not seeing anything else come in. If I didn't get to your question, or if one comes in at the last minute, don't worry. We record all the questions, and I will follow up with you via email or by phone call either today or tomorrow, so don't fret. If you ever need anything knowledge related, anything how-to related, please just email training@abacusnext.com. If you email that inbox, we can respond to you pretty darn quickly with a solution to your question. Or if it's something that requires a little bit more attention, we'll schedule an appointment with you. And if you have any requests for any future webinars, any topics that you'd like us to cover, please email webinars@abacusnext.com, and we'll make sure that we get your webinar topics added to the list and get those on the calendar. Thank you so much for joining. I always appreciate it, and I look to see you again on a future webinar. Bye-bye.